Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to Dogs 101. I'm your host Nick. As always, disclaimers. I'm no expert. I know a little bit about a little bit. I was a trainer, I was a groomer, I worked at a pet store for multiple years. So I know a thing or two about dogs. So what little knowledge I have, I'm going to impart onto you. Today's episode family. He's the one that came to me with this question, which is a good one, comes up a lot, and it's one that you might be dealing with on your own. So his question was, how come his dog listens to him and not his wife? And so, wife or girlfriend, I don't know. I still getting to know you, dude. I'm gonna keep it in though. Sorry about that. So this happens a lot, and oftentimes the fault doesn't always lie with the person who the dog doesn't listen to. It actually lies with the person the dog does listen to. So quite often what's going on is that in his case, it's usually for multiple different reasons. So in his case, I did some probing questions, so I found out what was his, but I'm going to try and have this apply to anybody. So he kind of comes off a little alpha when he's dealing with his dog. Now, the thing is that if you have a wolf or a wolf mix, God bless you, good luck, and yes, unfortunately, you are going to have to act like an alpha because wolves don't have it bred into them to work alongside humans. They are like hardwired to work alongside other dogs. So they need an alpha structure. Now, dogs, we've bred for generations to the point where now they instinctively know a dog-human interaction is a thing that they crave and want to fulfill, and they understand that the human dog dynamic doesn't have to be alpha beta. Instead of being an alpha, you want to be more of a benevolent leader. One of the things that I told him to try, and it seems so friggin' arbitrary, but it's something I'm going to repeat a lot because it actually does make a difference, is let's say the dog's doing something undesirable. Your first instinct might be to say no to the dog, and instead you want to say uh-uh. Again, seems very arbitrary, but the reason why is because no comes across as very alpha. My house, my rules, my thing. Whereas is like a benevolent leader reminding them, oh, remember the rules that are set in place, try not to, do that again. It comes across as a lot less confrontational, and there are quite a few dogs that are super smart, maybe super strong-headed, they have a lot of alpha in them. You come across as alpha, they're going to be like, okay, well, if you want to be alpha and I want to be alpha, we're going to have to try and figure this can be brats. So if you have more than one dog in a household, absolutely one of them is going to have to be the alpha. And usually the easiest thing to do is just look at how they interact, figure out which one between the two of them, which one they've decided is alpha, and then just follow suit. Have the alpha eat a split second before the other one. Have the alpha go through the door before the other one does. It's very easy between the two dogs. When it comes to the humans, if and I'm not to be sexist, but this happens, a lot more often in a male-female pair. A lot of the times, the guy tries to come across like an alpha, whereas the mom tries to come across as a buddy. And that's kind of what was happening in this case. So what was going on is that he would, take care of behavioral training. So, for example, like having the dog not bolt out the door, or he actually took care of. Oh no, a specific example is that the dog stole food off the table once, and he trained to keep the dog from doing that again. So that was his kind of training. Whereas her kind of training was more along the lines of like sit for a treat, look cute for a treat, roll over for a treat. So the dog kind of get used to only listening to her when it was with treats in hand and for fun things, not for actual behavior. So yeah, if you decide that you want to try and act alpha to a dog, well, then the dog is going to be like, okay, well, if you're alpha, then I guess I'm beta, and then that makes her Charlie. So you don't want to confuse them by doing that. You want to just do, benevolent leader training as opposed to alpha training. So that was one of the, one of the issues there. Also, they do have a poodle. A poodle is very smart and is going to be able to figure out exactly how much they can get away with. So for instance, let's say that you have a herding dog. And so the dog, would never dream of biting the ankles of the dad, but with the mom is always trying to nip the ankles to herd them as though they were a herd animal. Well, sometimes you want to be thinking about, well, how am I reacting to this? So if the dog bites you on the ankle and your reaction is to go, ow, pull away, much like a herd animal would do, you're reinforcing that behavior. That was the reaction that they were hoping to get. Whereas possibly the male in the household, if the dog tries to bite the ankle, they go, hey, and they turn towards the dog. The complete opposite behavior of a herd animal. Well, the dog's like, that's not the result I wanted. Might try it one or two more times, but after a while gives up because they're not getting the desired result. So consider basically how the two of you are interacting, between the dog. A lot of the stuff too is, well, who does the feeding? Now, in this case, it was her. What I'm pretty sure was that she would just do the thing where she would put the bowl down. The dog would be starting to eat from the bowl as she's setting, the food down. So the dog might be misinterpreting the relationship where it's like, okay, Dad's the alpha, I'm the beta, and the Charlie feeds me. So, an old school way to deal with that. It's a little gross and it's a little outdated, but whoever's feeding the dog would just spit in the food before giving it to them. It's a little gross, but basically that would trigger their alpha instinct, where in the wild the alpha eats first, the beta eats second. So without even saying or doing anything different, you're basically, the dog smells the saliva in the food, and the dog would go, "Oh, it's your food that you're sharing with me, not I'm a little princess. Yeah, you give me that food." Oh, what, you didn't, heat it up? Where's the wet food? You know what I mean? So if that makes sense. But the way I prefer to do it, this is what I highly recommend to everybody else, is that when you do the feeding, that you have them wait for it, and then they only go after the food once you have released them. And that's just a way that you can show with your actions that it is, in fact, your food that you're allowing them to have when you say so. And it makes a big difference, because then they don't start to expect it, demand it, acts, kind of resource guarding about it. I mean, it is also a great way to kind of tone down resource guarding. That's not technically the subject, but while I am on it, so one thing that's important, especially if they come from, like, a puppy mill, or they were a stray at one point, or even just like a not so great shelter where they had to basically, one bowl, 20 dogs, whoever eats eats. So if that's the kind of situation they're used to, they probably are going to be pretty resource guarding. So what you want to do is, make sure that they get released in order to go eat. Put your fist in the bowl, make them eat around your fist, take it away for a second, give it back. Little things like that are going to help out a lot, because, like, let's say you have a kid happens to stumble by the bowl, a little too close, the dog might misinterpret it, or the kid might even just be a toddler that just wants to try and grab a mouthful too, and the dog cannot react and shoo away the kid with their mouth, which is how they would with another dog. So something to consider just while I'm on the subject. But yeah, when you have multiple people in the household, again, so let's say the dog is fine with you and your significant other, but then they want to try and be in charge of the kids. Well, again, if you're coming across as alpha, then they're going to see the littler kids as being beneath them. Something that you can do is have the kids join in on the training. Have the kids be the one that releases the food. Things like that really go a long way. And getting back to the whole treat training thing, one thing that you want to do is, when you do first get a dog, just so that they can understand what you're trying to do and reinforce it, I do recommend, using treats, for each trick, but eventually start to try and wean them off. And the way that you need to do this, and this is, day one, week one stuff, but I'm going to kind of have to jump around here as I tackle each topic, but it's so important when you ask for something and the dog does something. Yeah, you give the treat, but you also want to give a word that marks what they did correctly. So, for instance, I always prefer yes. So, sit, the dog sits. As soon as that butt hits the ground, yes, and then they get the treat. Sit, the dog, no, don't say yes, don't say yes. Now the butt hits the ground, yes, and then give the treat. And eventually, you can maybe give the treat every other time and just make sure you're saying yes so that they know they did the right thing. And then that way you don't have to have a treat on you at all times, but just a yes will be like, okay, I got it right. Because dogs really do have a fuzzy memory. They need a lot of repetition, and they do want an acknowledgement. What a lot of people do is they'll say sit, the dog sits, and then the person now goes back to the conversation with the other, like with somebody. I see it all the time. I saw it all the time in the pet store. The dog would be like, trying to, go do their own thing. Oh, hey, I haven't seen you so long. Hey, sit. And the dog would sit and then look up, at the mom for, treat, acknowledgement, a head pat, something. And the person would just go right back to talking to their friend, and the dog was like, okay, well, don't know what that was all about, so they get up. Now, here's the thing. A, did the person teach the dog to sit and wait, to hold that sit and stay until they get released? Probably not. The dog did do the sit, and so even if the pet parent said yes, the dog's probably going to get back up again because now the trick is over. So be very consistent with what you do. And that's, I think, a big one when it comes to a dog, listening to one person or not listening to another. Most likely, the one that they're listening to will, tell them to do something, only tell them once, and, basically, make sure that it gets done. whereas maybe the person that the dog's not listening to is, asking for stuff repeatedly. Could you sit? Hey, sit. Hey, sit, please. Sit. Now the dog learned that you're not really going to be reinforcing it. You're just going to, ask them about 7 or 8 times, and then they'll get around to doing it on their own time. So some things to consider. Again, this is one I might revisit because it's going to be different for everybody. I'm just talking about general stuff and what was specific to Zach's particular case. But I'm going to keep trying to, address these as they come up, common problems. So please, if you have one specific to you, leave it in the comments. I'll try to address it in a video. That way you can find out, what you could do, to change the outcome, and also hopefully somebody else who's watching the video was having the same problem. They're just like, I have been doing that. Okay, all right, that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for listening. Please, like I said, leave a question in the comments, and yeah, I appreciate you. Awkward.